Scott with Starkey Family, fixing and rigging up, and today we got another breakdown. This time I'm getting sounds out of my turbo, so we're going to dig into it and see if we can fix this problem. I'm guessing that there's some type of air leak just from what I've found so far, so let's get on with this.
If I push this tube down, then what? It's normal. If I push the tube up, then it quits.
What's happening is, yes, I'm pressing down on the tube and it's making that horrible sound, but when I'm driving it down the road, every time the turbo engages, you hear that very, very loud. So I've got to get to the root of the problem and see what's leaking and see what's broke. To get the airbox off, you got 4 bolts, 2 up top, 2 on the bottom. Those are going to be 14 millimeter. And then right here at the side, I'm going to unclamp it. And for that, you're going to need an 8 millimeter socket. And these are the tools that I'm going to use doing this. Okay, I just simply loosened up the clamp and slid it over and then retightened it. So once I pull this apart, it's not going to drop down into the engine cavity. What we're going to do is just give it a nice little shove, and there it is, it's separated. Now, I'm just going to take this and pull it right straight out from the bolts. As you see, you just pull it straight out. Okay, with the breather box off, we can actually see the turbo now. Now, do you see all this black soot right in here where everything's blackened? Well, we got a leak, and that's where it's at. So I'm going to start taking some of this apart now. Where the leak is actually coming from, I'm going to go ahead and take this long pipe off just to get it out of my way. That again will be an 8 millimeter socket. Now I've got it loose, but I wanted to also let you know, when you're taking this pipe off, watch out for this sensor. You can either pull it apart at the connection or just lay the tube up here out of your way. I'm choosing to just lay it out of the way. Okay, go ahead and start it. I was actually not expecting that to be bad. This clamp is what I was actually expecting to be broken. So all this has to come off. So I'm going to start with this tube. Okay, so this clamp here is going to take a 11 millimeter, and then this one up here is going to take a 13 millimeter socket. Okay, instead of unplugging these sensors that are down in there, there's one there's some wires that run up. I've got plugs, so I'm simply going to unplug these and just let them stay attached. Okay, next I'm going to loosen up this exhaust clamp. This right here will be a 11 millimeter socket. So this line right here has to come off. Now, if you've never seen it before, this is called a crow's foot tool. Basically, all you do is you hook it to an extension, and yes, that's got my father's name on it. It's one of the tools he left to me. Basically, all you do is you come down the center, and then it allows you to grip onto it, even though that you have a tube in your way. So let me go ahead and get this off. And yes, if you haven't noticed, it is raining now. So I'm going to be doing this job in the rain at nighttime. Okay, so after you get it broke free with the crow's foot, you're not going to be able to move it around much. So you're going to take an angled wrench. This is mine. And you're going to come down inside of here, get lodged in there, and then you're just going to simply turn it. Now make sure you use penetrating oil on this. WD-40 or normal penetrating oil, either one is fine. Okay, so I've got the line loose, and if you see there's like a little adapter in there, on the very bottom of this, can you see that in there? There is an actual O-ring in there. So if you can keep this fitting in, leave it in. If not, you'll probably have to replace a rubber O-ring. Back here on the very back where the line goes, the oil line, you've got a bolt that you need to loosen up so you can actually bring this oil line out of the way. And that is going to require a 11mm socket. Okay, with that out of the way, you have a little bit more extra room to move your line so you don't break it. Okay, so while I'm doing some other stuff here, this is the penetrating oil that I use. This is a Howell's brand. It's really good stuff. It smells good too. So I want to make sure I hit these real good. You got 4 of them here. I got one back here. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so I just want to make sure I hit those with penetrating oil. That way I'll give it a little bit of a chance to soak in before I start taking them off. Okay, so where this braided line goes, I've got to unbolt that, and what I'm going to use for it is another one of my angled wrenches. So I can take this and simply lock onto it, and it'll help me out a lot easier. And this right here is going to be a 5/8. Okay, now make sure before you start doing anything with this that you saturate it with penetrating oil. That's something you don't want to forget. See how it comes loose like this? If you don't, you're liable to twist this whole line right here off. Okay, so that line is off now. Okay, to get the bottom nut out of this flange back here, someone had replaced this turbo gasket before, okay, and whoever replaced it put a 6-point head on it. As you can see on this nut right here and that one there, these are 12-point nuts, and I'll show you the difference on the sockets here in a minute. But for now, this one here, the size of the nut I had to use was a 15mm. Okay, so to actually achieve getting back there, I have a swivel on right there, and then I've got 2 extensions coming out to a ratchet. So this is the way you're going to look at it. You're going to have to come up and underneath the turbo. Now this is no fun at all, so have fun. I got that one out. Now the next one, you're just going to slightly go over behind your antifreeze lines and slide the extension and everything up. So I'm going to work on that one now. Okay, there's that nut. Okay, now I'm up to the top flange. So we're going to take a 12-point, but you can see the 12 points. This is another 1/2-inch wrench. We're going to get it down in there. This is going to be a rather slow process. So all I'm going to have to do is just loosen this up. So this nut here is a little bit tight. So all we're going to do is we're going to take another wrench. I'm going to take this. This will interlock them. That'll give me more leverage. Okay, now that this right here is broke free, this right here is actually a 1/2 inch. That's what I was using right there. So what I've actually got here is 13 millimeter. It's pretty close. But this is a speed wrench. So this is the same as a ratchet right here. And it's also a 12 point. So this is going to make things a lot easier for me. If you've never invested in one of these, you should. See, I just pull up, it goes through. Here at ratcheting, a lot simpler. Okay, I got all the bolts out, and as you can see down in there, that's the gasket. See that inside there? So that's what's blown. Okay, so this right here, there's a tube under here, and I've got to unbolt that. So there's two, this is where my socket is. So this right here, I'm gonna have to use an extension, and that is actually a 10 millimeter socket, and there's actually 2 bolts over there that I've got to take off, and then I should be able to lift this turbo on out of there. Okay, now got all the bolts undone. Got all the I had to go underneath and deal with the two bolts for the oil line underneath, and one of the heads was stripped out, so that didn't make much fun. So now I'm finally at the point to get this turbo out here. So now I'm gonna have to try to wrestle it out. I'm gonna try to set it right there. Yeah, geez, this is very heavy. Did I say it was very heavy? Very heavy. Okay, so there's the turbo out. Okay, now I know everything's wet right now, but there's a metal gasket that goes right here. Let me go get it. Okay, so this is what actually happened. This right here is a metal gasket, which I'm going to pull off. Do you see this section right here? Let me turn the light on here. Do you see this section here that blew out? And when I mean blew out, it blew out. That's where all that sound came from. So this is the gasket that goes right here. And then I'll show you where it goes on the turbo. So here's how that gasket would have fit on. So you can see what happened here. It blew out. It actually took a whole chunk of that out. This is a stainless steel gasket. So tomorrow, that's what I'm going to be doing. Okay, this is day 2 after I got everything taken off last night. Today, which is Saturday morning, I went through and gathered up parts. So let me show you what I've done and what I'm about to do. Okay, there's been a lot of people asking how much does a turbo on a Series 6 from a Series 60 Detroit diesel actually weigh? And the answer is 63 pounds. Okay, I want to show you this. You see this little plug right here? I'm pointing to this. Okay, so what had actually happened was that gasket up here, and you can see where it burnt. There was like a bunch of heat that came down. I'm guessing it was from that, because this plug, I just had to take a pair of needle nose pliers and pick everything out of it. The plug for this was completely fried. Not melted, but crispy fried. So, there is no dealership around me. and I couldn't find the normal part for a Detroit. I could order it, but that's not going to help me out today. I ended up going to a parts store, and they were able to run a cat number just by my little picture that I give them of the plug. So this is what I have. This is the same plug. Got a metal clip. I already tried it. It works absolutely perfect. It's got these type of ends on it. So basically, I'm just going to put a wire in it and crimp it. And, you know, there's little wraps, heat wraps for it and everything. But if you ever run into this problem and you have a place that sells cat parts, here's your part number. But I am going to warn you, I don't know how much the Freightliner part is, but this one here was $25. Yeah, I know. So, anyways, there you go. And that's for the EGR crap. So, let me go ahead and start splicing that together. Okay, so now what I'm actually going to do is, here's the plug, here's the wires. I'm going to put a layer of solder on the end of the wires. Then I'm going to put them inside of here and put another layer of solder over top of all that. Now, this right here is the shrink wrap, and this right here is the shrink wrap that I'm going to use to go over top of this to make sure that everything is completely water sealed, even though it's raining today. Not the best way to solder, I guess, but it'll work. This will just give the wire an extra protective coating. Okay. Okay, now that I got the wires actually coated, I'm going to feed them inside of these terminals here. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to crimp the wires. So I would just crimp them. Well, make sure you get them good too. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the solder back over top of all that. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these protective sleeves from the top, which are a smaller size. I'm going to heat these up and shrink them. And you can see them molding to the wire. Okay, then I'm going to take the overlap, which is a larger size. Go back over top of it again. And you can see this actually shrinking down. You want to make sure you get it good. You want to make sure you get all the way around it with the fire, or if you use a heat gun. Okay, now we're going to take black vinyl tape and wrap this whole entire wire set up here. That should protect it again. Okay, then to make sure that the black tape seals good, you're going to take fire again, and all you're going to do is just heat the black tape up. You don't want to melt the black tape, but what you're going to do is you're shrinking the black tape. Now what this will do is it'll ensure that you have a really, really good seal. And now you're going to use some more of this tubing. This right here, I'll put the wire inside, and this will be to protect it from anything rubbing. And then, to hold that on, we're going to take some more of this black tape, the vinyl tape. I'm not going to wrap the whole entire section. Just going to do a couple little places here. So we'll do the top. We'll do the bottom. And then we're going to do the middle. And to make sure that doesn't come off, we're going to heat that up. Okay, so now The wire is actually protected all it needs to be. Any heat that comes down now, and this right here will go right back into this loom, so it'll be fine. So now all I've got to do is just take this and plug that in. Okay, now before we put this connector together, this is something that's really important to do. Get some light bulb grease. And what this will actually do is, when you put that plug in there, it'll displace any type of moisture that happens to get around it. It'll keep anything from rusting. This is really good stuff. Use it on your light bulbs too. Not on the glass, but on the connectors. So we'll put this right here so it'll go inside. It'll keep all this stuff from dry rotting. And then the plug, make sure you get some in there too. You can't put too much in there, so what's not needed will just be pushed right outside. Okay, and you'll see that metal clip. There's some little ribs back here, and that little clip holds it in place. And as you see right here, any grease that is too much gets squeezed out, and that will just simply evaporate. Okay, so I took my drill, I had to, with my wire wheel, and all I did was clean the top of this off. The old gasket did not want to come off. So now I'm going to clean up this exhaust pipe. Basically, I'm just going to do this, go around the whole thing, and knock off all that old rust on the inside and the outside of that lip. And make sure that you don't forget to cover up your oil tube so nothing gets down inside there while you're doing this. Okay, with that cleaned, now I'm just going to take this and go around the turbo. Like so. Okay, that side pretty well taken care of and cleaned. Now I'm going to gently, and I'm going to emphasize gently, go over top of this flange and clean it up the same way. All I'm going to do is just go around this area here, like so. And this right here will knock any extras off. And then all I gotta do is just wipe it off. Okay, now up here, I'm just gonna go lightly around and buff all this up too. Just the same way. And all you're gonna do is just lightly go over it and clean up the area, then wipe everything off. Okay, with the area buffed down, you wanna take a rag and make sure you wipe the whole area down. Make sure you take your finger, go over everything, make sure there's no burrs or anything like that. And all these little studs, you want to make sure that you wipe off all the threads on them. You just want to make sure this is as clean of a surface as you possibly can. Okay, so you've noticed that I'm missing one stud on there. It fell out somewhere, and honestly, I just can't find it. So while I was at the store, I went ahead and picked up a new one. So we're going to go ahead and install that. Now, before I actually install it, I went ahead and picked up a new bottle of anti-seize by Permatex. This is anti-seize, and the purpose of buying that is if you ever have to remove something, well, this will make your life a heck of a lot better. What happens is, if you just put metal and metal inside there, chances are it's going to rot in there, and when you do have to remove it, it's going to break. This right here will allow the threads to get tight without seizing it in there and fusing it together. So I'm sure you've seen me use this stuff on other videos. It's some really good stuff. Okay, so basically here's all we have to do with this. Of course, we don't need that much on there. It doesn't take hardly anything at all. You see that little brush? Very simple. You can come down here and just lightly paint the threads. Just like so. So when you actually go to put that in there, it will not seize. If you notice, my grips are actually kind of rusty right now. Well, we can take care of that real quick. This right here is one of the products I use on my wrenches to keep them from doing this. And when they do this, well, this is all you have to do with them. Same thing on the threads. Very simple. Great stuff. Get you a can. Well, basically all I'm going to be doing is taking my fingers and getting this stud started in there. And once it starts tightening up like it just did, then those grips that you saw me use, I'm just going to simply use it, put them on this flat section right here and screw them on. So, no big deal. Okay, so if you have any problems putting the stud in there, if it goes in kind of rough, all you gotta do is just put two nuts together and then just tighten them. As you see, the stud moves. No problem. And then when you're ready, just back off the top one and then they're both loose. Okay, we're about ready to put this turbo back on, so I went ahead and slid the gasket up on here. And by the way, if you happen to get a gasket, make sure you get one that's got 4 holes in it and slides up on the studs. Otherwise, you're going to have some fun. Okay, so providing that you make sure everything is cleaned and you have everything taken care of, you've got all your tools where you need them, it's time to now put the turbo on. Now here's a little trick. We have to have this gasket right here. But I'm going to be putting a turbo down in there. So I don't want to take a chance of knocking this gasket off of there. Well, how do you keep it on there? You see this? This is just red Lucas grease. That's it. You don't want to overdo it, but all you have to do is just smear it around on the gasket. And this stuff is like really tacky. Okay, and just make sure you get the whole entire thing. And I'm going to take my finger and just kind of clean it off. As you see, not going to hurt one thing. This is just a paper gasket. You can actually do both sides if you want to. And if you ever have to take this off, you won't have to do what I did and have to chisel and use a wire wheel and a drill to actually get the remains off. But anyways, just to give you an idea how sticky this is. That's it. So, we are just going to take that and set that in place where it goes. Looks simple, don't it? Well, as long as I don't do anything with the turbo to just, kind of move it off or anything, that'll stay right in place. So I can actually, after the turbo's on, I can send the bolts up underneath and into the bottom and screw them in place. Okay, I'm about to pick up 63 pounds of torture. Ugh. Okay, after getting the turbo in place, make sure you put the top 2 bolts in there first, because you do not want this thing falling out. Don't tighten them down, just get them started, because you're going to need to actually tighten this up equally. Just make sure you get the top 2 in there, but where you can actually still lift your turbo, as you can see. And because now we got to make sure that that gasket for the oil drain down here is lined up. Now it should be in place, but if not, I may just have to move it just a slight fraction to get it lined up. Okay, I got the gasket lined up and I just installed the bolts. Now on each side of the gasket you have these tabs that kind of extend down of this area. What happens is you can pull up onto the turbo to release the pressure on the gasket. All you do is stick a screwdriver in there and just kind of move those tabs. That'll slide the gasket from one side to the other. Get one bolt started at a time. Pretty simple. Okay, so we're back up here. I've got these two top nuts screwed in. It's still not tight, but now I've got to go down and reach in and put the nuts on the bottom two studs. So then I can take my ratchet up underneath the turbo and start tightening everything up. This is kind of fun getting in there, but oh well, that's the way it goes, right? So, as you see, I have a bunch of extensions just up underneath the turbo. Okay, I've got all these tightened down now, but I wanted to tell you that the way I did this to try to keep everything even, I started out right here on this corner, the left top corner. Then I went down to the bottom right corner. Then I went back to the left bottom corner. Then I came back up to the right top corner and repeated that twice. Okay, with that out of the way, now I'm going to put this little line on right here. And it's going to go on the very back of this housing. Okay, I've got that tight now. It is kind of a pain in the butt if you don't have any of these wrenches like this. They have an offset on it, but you can still do it. Okay, so now these wires coming off the turbo, we're going to plug these into the connectors. But before we do, we're going to use more of this light bulb grease and make sure that nothing gets up in there. Like I said, I filled it up, so don't be stingy. Okay, one of the wires, the loom was missing. Maybe it became brittle and broke off. But regardless, I added a new loom to it. I taped it just the same. And it's in the important areas where anything would actually rub. And I just taped it to the other one. Okay, so now we're going to move back here to the exhaust clamp. This clamp just a little bit. This clamp is what's considered like a V clamp, okay? So when you go to actually tighten this down, it's going to draw these two flanges right here together. So you can't use a normal flat clamp on this. This is a specialty clamp. Okay, so before we're going to assemble this, I am going to take some of this anti-seize and lightly go over the threads. Okay, so I was going to tell you that the easiest way to get this clamp on, if you already have everything assembled here, is the exhaust is actually a larger diameter than what the turbo is. Okay, so if you start this housing on the turbo side, then you get it around the whole diameter, then you can simply just move it to the middle. Whereas if you try it on the exhaust side, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to put this clamp on because you have to expand it out a lot more. The next thing is, you see how I've got that angled where it's going to be going straight up. By the time I tighten that down, the threads are going to go in at least a good inch or two. Okay, so that's actually going to be pretty well straight. Well, if you ever have to come in to do an exhaust work, you want to make sure that you don't have to take a bunch of stuff apart. So if you angle this up where you can get a ratchet and socket right onto it, it'll make your life a lot simpler. And then of course you don't have to take this airbox off or anything like that. Okay, so when I was tightening up the clamp, I ran into a small situation. The threads actually stripped down on me. No big deal. The threads were very long. As you see, I just added a washer, 2 nuts, another washer, and then the original nut. That spaced it up higher above the all thread that's on there, and the clamp is fixed. So now it's time to put the top oil line back on, and then the retaining screw. Okay, I've got the oil line back on. I've got it secured back here. So now it's time to put this line on. And here's another one of those V-clamps that I was talking about earlier. And basically the same thing goes with it. As you crush it down, it squeezes these 2 flanges together. Okay, with this clamp here, I'm going to show you how this works. I have put the line on, and I have semi-tightened it up a little bit, but there's still a gap. I'm just ratcheting it. You can see that rod being drawn in from the nut. And now you can see everything closing up. You might even be able to hear it. And it's tight. I also wanted to add, make sure you put these studs where you're not going to get your head on it if you do have to work on something else, because it's never any fun getting whacked with one of these. Time to put the airbox back on. Okay, so now before we put the airbox on, we've got to make some preparations. The first thing is you want to make sure that you're going to be able to have a really good seal. So the best way to do this is not use grease. You can, but don't. Armor all. This stuff is designed for plastic, rubber, all that stuff. And normally it helps if you turn it on first. Yeah, there we go. So we're just going to spray this housing here. And then we're just going to take a rag and wipe it around too. It's a lot easier to do it if you're not holding a camera. Just outside. And not only is it going to look good, but this is going to actually lubricate the hose that goes on there. So that's great. This time we're going to match these holes up and put them on these 2 studs here and these 2 studs down here. Now normally I use anti-seize, but what we're going to do is after we get the airbox up, then we're going to install the anti-seize, because these have little shafts on there. We don't need to spread the anti-seize and make a mess. Okay, now the airbox is up here. Now we're going to take anti-seize onto the threads and then put the washers and nuts on. 2 up here, and if you can see them, the 2 down here. Okay, so I've got all the nuts on there. As you can see, I've got them anti-seized. Same down here on the bottom. So now it's just time to tighten them up. Time to actually put the hose back on the airbox and the turbo. So that's going to go there. Then the other side goes right there. And then we have a small section right here that we'll twist around. But for now, we got to do a little bit more cleanup. And we're going to break out the armor all again. So basically, all we're going to do is turn it on. And then we're just going to spray. Same thing here. Spray the inside. And then all we're going to do is wipe around, clean that area. That way the hoses slip back together really easy. Okay, with the areas all cleaned up on both ends, now it's time to put them on. Okay, time to tighten up the clamps. Okay, got the clamp on the top. And all this right here is, just so you see, is just an attachment for a screwdriver. It's still an 8mm. Okay, the only thing I got left is to take that hose and put it on here. But I've got to get the armor all and lubricate it. Poured some armor all right here and right here on this hose. So I'm just going to wipe that around and then tighten up the clamp. Okay, you see how easy that hose went on? If you don't lubricate it, sometimes you gotta sit there and fight with these hoses to get them together. Make sure you buy some armor all. Now that the hose is on, we can install this plug. But before we do, we're gonna use more light bulb grease. Okay, applying a generous amount of light bulb grease, now we can plug this back together. Maybe. Kind of hard to do. Okay, I want to explain something else that while you're in here you ought to do. With your armor all, you've got this rubber seal right here that mounts against the hood, as you can see. Shoot it with armor all. Use a generous amount too. Then take it and just simply wipe it down. Wipe the whole entire housing down if you want. This is just a boot. Not much different than what you find in a sports car, like for T-tops or a door jamb, your sill on your doors. Same difference. You want to make sure it's protected. Okay, so everything is put together. The job is completely finished. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop in the truck, start it up, and then I'm going to stand out here for about 10 minutes while this truck is running and make sure I have no oil leaks, make sure I have no problems with it. And then I'm going to shut it down, and I guess that'll be it. To make sure and let you know, one thing that you do want to watch while your truck is running, you want to make sure that you end up with no oil leaks right here. If you do, you'll have to tear it all the way down again to get in there to fix it. So hopefully you have no problems. Hopefully I have no problems. I haven't started the truck up yet, so we'll see. Family fixing and rigging up. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've been able to tear your own truck down and do your own parts, do your own repairs. And I hope you've saved yourself some money. Don't forget to catch my other videos and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you.